morning. So, today's our second day talking about the parks. And remember, next week we will meet in the the conference room. We're going to talk to Lou Mangiello. So, when you come in next week, just come over to the conference room. It'll be the same setup like it was when we talked to Ron. Okay? So, any questions about the rest of the semester? We'll also spend some time going over the second assignment. That's due the last class period. But yeah, questions? Okay. So, since we're talking to since we're talking to Lou next week, I want to go ahead and go over some of the rest of the parks. As I said, a lot of my reference is with Walt Disney World. However, I want to try to go over some of the highlights of some of the other parks as well. So, some of the things that I've noticed at some of the other parks. So let me pull up a few things real quick. So I do want to, we'll show briefly Journey into Imagination. And this is not the version that Ron was involved with. This is a later version. But we'll go through here before we get on to some of the other parks. So right here, this view would be people riding on the monorail. If you've ever been to, or if you haven't been to Epcot, part of what they wanted to do with Epcot, remember, was this experimental, that's the Imagination Pavilion. They wanted to do the experimental prototype community of tomorrow, and so they wanted to highlight what you could do in the park when you went. So, what you do is you can get onto the monorail at the Magic Kingdom, and you can actually ride it around the loop, and you can ride it into Epcot. And what happens when you ride into Epcot is you ride in, and then you ride a big circle around Future World, or through Future World. So you can kind of see the Future World pavilions, and then you can also see the World Showcase. And so much as with anything that Disney did, much with anything that Disney did, they were always trying to promote their products. And so this was another way to promote some of their products. And so, as Ron indicated, the original Journey into Imagination looked very, very different than this. And then in '98, they went to a new ride scheme. They got rid of the Dreamfinder and Figment. There was a large outcry. So in the early 2000s, they brought back Figment. They brought him back sort of in this cartoon or computer-generated version. And so in the original ride, it was Dreamfinder and Figment showing you through the Imagination Pavilion. This is, Figment actually kind of represents the problem child, if you will, in the Imagination Pavilion. So he's always getting into things, kind of messing up the tour. That's one of the few original animatronics from the original ride. Most of it's computer generated now. So you kind of work your way through the ride. Skip forward, and here's Figment's house. So you see in this version, as I said, Figment sort of represents that problem child, if you will, throwing a wrench into the different plants. So now, two things I want to highlight at Disneyland. The original Disneyland, the only park that Walt Disney himself was present at the opening. He was involved with designing Walt Disney World and the Magic Kingdom and Epcot, however passed away before the Magic Kingdom was opened. And Epcot, as we know, did not, it became more of a theme park than what his original vision was. So when we go to Disneyland in California, the two rides that I would like to show, the first is Radiator Springs Racers from the popular Cars movies. Now, when you walk into, this is at California Adventure, and they have a Cars Land. So you can actually walk down, and you can sort of see here, you can see the backdrop, and you walk into Cars Land with Flo's V8 Cafe, the Cozy Cone Motel, and then their big attraction is the Radiator Springs Racers, which is part dark ride, part fast track ride. Has anyone been to Epcot and been on Test Track? Okay, this is supposed to be the same type of ride technology and layout as Test Track at Epcot. But as you'll see, completely differently themed than Test Track at Epcot. Whereas Test Track at Epcot is taking you through a series of how cars are tested before they're released or before they're put into mass production. This is taking you on a ride through Radiator Springs with your favorite Radiator Springs friends. Can everybody see? Okay. There's Minnie and Band. And so, again, like I pointed out last week, with the eyes, this is especially where that comes in handy, the new technology, being able to project things with the eyes. And so you go one of two ways. You can go into Casa Della Tires. The other, you go into Ramon's shop and get a paint job. So, and then another ride I would like to show, and this is a dark ride. However, Indiana Jones Adventure, which was opened late 90s, or mid 90s, I should say. And this, if you've been to Animal Kingdom in Walt Disney World, is supposed to be the same type of technology and layout as the ride Dinosaur. So this is a very controlled ride, but your ride car reacts individually, where the tires are reacting individually, so it feels like you're going over bumps. There's a portion in here where you go over a bridge, so it really feels like you're going over rough terrain. And as I said, this one, see if they use better. So here's the full ride queue and everything. Yeah, this one looks a little better. The dinosaur ride at Animal Kingdom, using the same layout as this, is one of the things that gave rise to the rumor that maybe Dino Land USA would be rethemed as a Indiana Jones land in Orlando. One of the coolest attractions to me deals with Indiana Jones. Hollywood Studios in Orlando has the Indiana Jones Spectacular Stunt, or Stunt Spectacular, where they actually recreate the scene using the large rolling ball. So next, we'll go to Disneyland Hong Kong. And this, I showed this ride because this is credited by some as the best Disney ride, the best technology for a Disney ride. This is Disneyland Hong Kong's version of the Haunted Mansion. It's called Mystic Manor. What's so different about this is it is a trackless system. So the cars move independently, or they don't move on a track. It's programmed, but they don't move on a track. And so, try to see where the, so here we go.
I was just looking for, oh, there's the music box I told you about. I must find my little friend.
And the one thing these videos cannot capture is just the surround experience riding through these settings. So you see how each car moves independent. And so the rumor with Inside Out possibly taking over the Imagination Pavilion, one of the rumors is the type of technology that's used in Mystic Manor would be the technology used in the ride, the Inside Out ride. Imagine it getting very cold in the ride. So the few shots of the floor that you get, you'll notice you don't see tracks on the floor. That's what they mean by trackless system. And then Hong Kong Disneyland is also one of the first parks to have a Marvel experience. So here's the Iron Man experience. And this is a 3D ride similar to the Star Tours at Hollywood Studios and Walt Disney World, and then the Star Tours in Disneyland. You see Dumbo flew past you. So if it seems a little out of focus, you would usually be looking at this with 3D glasses on.
What's up, buddy? I'm busy here at the expo, hanging with my people. Okay, fine. Wait. What? Hydra was my arc reactor? Get out of there, Jarvis. I'm on my way. Jarvis, you need to lose some weight there, buddy. Just to be clear, this is not part of the tour. I know, Hydra can't get the arc reactor.
Apologies.
Nice work. Let's get you back to the expo. Miss me? 1, 2, 3. Come on, Jarvis. Blast 'em. Good job. All the robots destroyed? I am really... Go, go, go! We need to take this thing out. Jarvis, how are we going to take this thing out? More firepower? Time to unwrap the toys. Ladies and gentlemen, the Air Force has arrived. Let's go. Stay close to me. I'll keep you safe. Okay, fire! You found its weakness. Well, shoot now! Go, go, go! Hi, how are you? Enjoying the tour? Jarvis, those aren't just guests, they're heroes. Thank you so much. Your power's failing. Shoot me the grappling cables. Okay, now let's get all of you back to the expo. Don't worry, Jarvis, I got you. Sort of. Yeah, okay, good. We're almost there, buddy. Hold on. Jarvis, detach the cable. Welcome back. We saved the arc reactor. I couldn't have done it without you. No, dummy, don't even get out. Okay, that's it. I'm turning you into a coin press machine. Hey, Randy!
To go to Disney Sea in Tokyo, they have Journey to the Center of the Earth. So in Japan, the themes are there's a sea theme park, all focused around the sea. So if you remember the movie, if you've seen the movie Journey to the Center of the Earth, this is the interactive ride. So you know it would be a really neat research project and documentary. Somebody go to all the Disney parks and do a documentary on all the Disney parks. The Disney Corporation has come a long way from the first rides that they opened in Disneyland in 1955. All right, 2 more parks to try to hit. I want to direct your attention over to this board. How many people have been to Disneyland in California? Have you ridden the Nemo adventure? The Nemo submarine adventure? That submarine adventure took the place of the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea submarine voyage, which was at Disneyland and then later opened at Walt Disney World. I had been on the one at Walt Disney World. And at Walt Disney World, that's actually where the Seven Dwarfs mine train sits now. However, when Walt Disney credited one time to have the 8th largest submarine fleet in the world, the mock submarines they had for that 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea ride. So the next park we'll go to Disneyland Paris, which we talked about. Remember, Disneyland Paris is probably the the Disneyland ride that had the most problems as far as being built. It was originally built as Euro Disney. It was built outside of Paris, close proximity to Paris, and a lot of citizens felt that it was cultural imperialism, laying American values over the Disneyland and kind of spreading American values into Europe, and which later led the Disney Corporation to show more cultural awareness when they opened some of their later parks. So here is one of the few roller coasters. There's a growing number of roller coasters, but this is a roller coaster based around Indiana Jones in what is now known as Disneyland Paris. And so you don't see, I like showing or watching this because you don't see this type of ride in a Walt Disney park very often. And if anybody's seen Temple of Doom, you know, this is supposed to represent somewhat the mine train journey or mine train chases in the Temple of Doom movie. Is a very fast-paced ride for sure. And then the last Disney
I used
Shanghai
to hate pooping in public.
that we'll show
You know the feeling.
is the Tron coaster at Shanghai Disneyland. This is no longer a rumor. They have started construction on it. They are building a Tron coaster beside Space Mountain at Walt Disney World in Orlando. And so I'm not sure if it will be the same layout. The early drawings look as though it'll be the same. But here's one of the more popular rides at Shanghai Disneyland. And if you've ever seen the movie Tron, it was an early movie in the early 80s, and then they remade it more recently. And another trivia point about Tron, it was one of the first Disney movies that had the Pixar technology used in it. The Pixar technology was used in certain scenes in the 80s version of Tron. And then these cars, you see how you're on kind of like a motorcycle, so you're bent over. These cars also are similar to the cars used in the Flight of Passage at the World of Pandora, or Pandora, the World of Avatar in Animal Kingdom. Now that ride is you're in front of a big screen and it's motion activated, but it's using a similar ride car, if you will. right, and I have a few more that we could show, but are there any ones people have been interested in seeing?
Well, I've been seeing all of them, and I'm kind of upset that America don't have this one for China. Apparently, the Chinese people have this one. Well, my question actually is, have you been to all of them?
All parks? No.
Which one?
No, I would love to go to all parks. I've been to Walt Disney World. So I've been to the 4 parks in Walt Disney World. But I haven't been to Disneyland, and I haven't been overseas to go to any of the Disney parks.
That's one of your goals that you want to try to do?
I would love to do that. That would be possibly an excursion for the future.
And then my other question is, which one do you think has the best part?
The best park? Well, that depends on who you ask. I think I will always be partial to Disney World because that's my experience. That's where I've been. So wherever I go, I think I would be partial to Disney World. It's the largest. It has 4 parks, 2 water parks. However, now other Disney parks, with the exception of Shanghai because it's so new, the other parks have multiple parks. So there is a park in with Disneyland Paris, based around film, much like Hollywood Studios is in Orlando. Disneyland has California Adventure now. There's the Disney Sea, the Disneyland Japan, and the Disney Sea Japan. So there's multiple parks at each location, and the purpose for that was really came along, and it was a big emphasis during Michael Eisner's tenure at Disney, that they wanted to find ways to have people spend more time on property. So, and one of the biggest catalysts of that was, especially when you go to Disney World, it's located so close to the coast that a lot of people were going to Disney World and then they would go to the beach, or they were going to the beach and then they would stop at Disney World. And so the Disney Corporation during his tenure discussed and decided, instead of having people to leave property and go to different attractions, try to keep them on property as much as possible, which is why you have Disney World. Now, so I think I would always be partial to Disney World. However, Ron has shared with me he would always be partial, or his home park is Disneyland. And he says that the Magic Kingdom at Disney World is much larger in size. However, the Magic Kingdom at Disneyland has more attractions within the park. So that would be another thing. Go to multiple ones and let us know which is your favorite. Any other questions or any other rides you've been interested in seeing?
So the Hong Kong ride that we saw, that was all in English, but like the Shanghai one, they have like, is that Japanese?
So they're,
Chinese?
yeah, so portions of the parks are in English, and then portions are in the local languages. So, for instance, when they opened in Tokyo, they actually had 3 different languages that they opened in. Okay, and so that's a good question though. As far as the rides, I'm not sure if some of the queues are in the local language and then the ride is in English, because a lot of people outside of the United States also know how to speak English, more so than people in the United States know how to speak other languages, because people are taught from an early age. So I don't know if that's the case in all the parks, but it's an interesting observation.
This is actually more of just like a comment, and then a question afterwards. But when I went to Disney California Adventure this summer, we went to Cars Land, and the ride, which was called the Radiator Springs.
Radiator Springs Racers?
Yeah, that was actually out of order, and so that was kind of disappointing because that was one of the rides that we really wanted to go on. But as far as like the the rides in general that are based on movies, and when they say their little like animatronic voices, did the actual actors of the movies like play a part in that, or is it just like computer generated?
It depends. If you look at, and actually if you go and you look at a person's IMDb page, sometimes it will say they played the voice of Mater in a ride or Mater in a video game. I know Larry the Cable Guy has been, I think his voice is always used with Mater. Where if you go and you watch the Cars tune, there were a series of shorts that came out, and a lot of them featured Mater because of the popularity of the character. So Larry the Cable Guy is Mater, however, there's another person playing Lightning McQueen, having his voice. Now, for the parks and for the attractions, my understanding is they try for all of them to have the original actors' voices. So you go to the Frozen ride in Epcot, and you're going to hear the voice of Anna and Elsa, Idina Menzel. So that's my understanding, is that because another goal of the Disney company is you have a movie, bless you, you're able to promote the movie, it opens well at the box office, it has merchandising deals, so there's a lot of merchandising behind it, and then ultimately you can open it up in the parks and have people experience the ride, or I'm sorry, experience the movie itself. And if you look at the history of the parks, that's how a lot of the attractions came about, because they were based on movies, based on the feature films of the company. However, there have been a few movies that have come out based around the attractions, namely Pirates of the Caribbean series, based after the rides at Disneyland and Disney World. There's a Haunted Mansion movie based after the rides. There's a Tomorrowland movie. And Country Bear Jamboree was one of the first movies made after a show at Walt Disney World. So anything else? We'll end on one of the other thrill rides, and this is at Disney World Animal Kingdom. It's Expedition Everest. And a really interesting thing about this ride, you actually go front and backwards during the ride. And you're confronted with a very large Yeti during the ride. The Yeti in the ride, if you've been on the ride, does not really move. I think it shakes its head or shakes its arms. When it was originally built and originally designed, that's a full function, supposed to be a full functioning animatronic. However, in order to fix the animatronic, they would essentially have to take the whole ride apart, because part of the animatronic, part of the support system for the animatronic is actually the support for the ride itself. So they kind of left it to where now it's a projection and more limited movement than they had originally planned. This is also a great view you can see out over the property. I think that's Hollywood Studios over there.
Alright, here we go.
You can see the Epcot Spaceship Earth. So here, this is the projection of the Yeti. If you look closely toward the end, you can actually see the animatronic. So right there was the animatronic version. It's supposed to be more fully functioning. So if you are interested in watching more videos, Theme Park Review is a good source. Also Sharp Productions, S-H-A-R-P Productions. They do a very good job of